Hey, cinema aficionados, Dan Patton, Screen Mag, thanks for checking in. Today, we're going to talk to one of our favorite Illinois-based filmmakers, Kelly Rundle. Kelly, along with his wife, Tammy, is the filmmaking duo behind the award-winning docuseries Hero Street. Hero Street is an intimate portrait at one of the most unique and patriotic neighborhoods in the United States. Located in Silvis, Illinois, the area is home to more U.S. combat veterans than pretty much any place on earth. The fourth installment of the series, An Infantryman From Hero Street, premieres November 12th at the Putnam Giant Screen in the Quad Cities. Now, Kelly, congratulations on your success. You've won multiple awards. You continue to win awards. But before we talk about the film, first I have to ask, how giant is this screen at the Putnam?
It's giant. So all of your good work or your mistakes are amplified. Three stories tall, I think.
So this fourth installment, how does it advance the narrative of Hero Street? And where has the narrative been, before you started shooting this one?
Well, the project started as a feature-length documentary concept, and we just dove in without having any funding 10 years ago, actually, Memorial Day 2012. And then we just struggled to raise money for the series. We kept shooting because, of course, we're trying to gather interviews with seniors and folks who remember the 8 heroes, brothers and sisters, family, friends. And so we just proceeded. Around 2015, WQPT, our local PBS station, came to us, and they had been offered a grant from the Illinois Arts Council. And they asked if we could somehow use that funding to create a Hero Street film. They knew it wasn't enough for the whole story, but the Arts Council wanted a visually creative documentary. So we had to turn around a proposal in 24 hours, and it got approved within 48. But what I thought about when we first heard about that was the letters, because of course we don't write letters anymore. The letters that the soldiers wrote home were beautifully written in appearance. They were in interesting envelopes. They had postage and marks on the letters that were interesting, the base stationery, all kinds of things. So we built the story around that, and we had one of the heroes, Frank Sandoval, who had written letters home, and we had a collection from when he was inducted and in May of 42, or in 42 until he was just a month before he died in May of 44. So that film was Emmy nominated and was well received. And so a few years later, we decided to reimagine the story as a series and have just proceeded accordingly. We jumped back in the series to the beginning for a film called Riding the Rails to Hero Street that talked about how the families came to settle here around the time of World War I.
Where are most of the majority of families, where are they coming from?
From Mexico, Guanajuato. And, around the time of World War I, there was a manpower shortage. So the US was happy to have Mexican workers here in the country working on the railroads and in other fields. And that's what brought folks here. We had 3 barrios here in the Quad Cities. There was one in Davenport, Cooks Point, there was Holy City in Bettendorf, and there was the Boxcar Village in the rail yard in Silvis.
So we have Letters Home, Riding the Rails. What was the third installment?
A Bridge Too Far from Hero Street. The story of William Sandoval. That's a different Sandoval family. But.
Excellent. And now we come upon the fourth one. How did you learn about the infantrymen, and what can you tell us about the main character of this documentary?
Joseph Sandoval was born in 1919 in a boxcar in the Silvis rail yard. And so by the time he came of age, that was right around the time that World War II was ramping up. Joe was actually married and had a small child, had a young son, and was drafted as the US and the Allies built up manpower for the push into Europe. And so Joe was put into the field just after the invasion of Normandy. And he was an armored infantry man. So he worked in tank support and very dangerous work.
How did you conduct research, and which family members or relatives of Joseph were you able to speak to?
We were able to interview Joe's sister Georgia and his brother Tanillo. Georgia died unexpectedly just last year, and Tanillo, who's in his 90s, is still with us. He always comes out to our showings. He'll be at the premiere event, and it's always you can't replace that intimate relationship that those folks had with someone that whose story you're trying to tell. So it's been a great joy to speak with them. We had access to Joe's letters and to other materials related to official reports. The battle that Joe was killed in on the Elbe River was documented by a military historian after the fact, and so we have all those reports.
What sort of memories do they have of Joe as a young man, obviously, and what kind of attitude do they have towards the United States and the way it behaves internationally, I guess is the best way to put it?
Yeah, so the Joe was the oldest boy, and so he was bright. He was a good student. He helped his parents, who spoke limited English, and just with family business and those kinds of things, and apparently helped other people in the neighborhood that way as well. So I think Joe was kind of looked up to by everybody. When around the time of the Great Depression, the residents of the rail yard were kind of evicted, if you will, and those families settled on 2nd Street, now known as Hero Street, on 3rd Street and 4th Street in Silvis. So when they were in that neighborhood, they didn't have electric lights, they didn't have indoor plumbing. And so one of the things that Joe and his brother Frank did as they began to work was they helped to improve their family home and installed those amenities that we take for granted. And I think Tanillo says it best maybe about how the families regarded their home here in the United States. The young men, almost all of them, were born here. They regarded this as their country, and they of course, like most of us, would have preferred to not be called to serve, if you will, dangerous work, and you didn't know if you'd come back. But they were called, and some joined, some went when their notice came. But they provided that service because this was their country.
What about the rest of the community, specifically, coming from the Hero Street area, or, having ancestors from that area? How have they responded? What kind of enthusiasm do they have for the series?
Well, the enthusiasm in our Latino community is pretty high for the series. And I think it's like a lot of local stories. There are certainly people here who don't know about it, even though it's featured in the press quite a bit. Or maybe they've heard of it, but don't know exactly what it is. At the screenings, I often talk about growing up here, about graduating from United Township High School, attending school with kids who were related to the heroes. And I never heard about it until we had lived away from here for almost 25 years. So maybe I'm doing some penance, making up for that ignorance, but it's an important local history story. And here locally, if you know about John Deere, if you know about Black Hawk, if you know about Vic Spiderbeck, you should also know about Hero Street.
Indeed. And it is an epic. I understand we're like halfway through. It is going to be an 8-part series. Can you tell us in what direction will it continue from here?
Yeah, so there'll actually be 9 parts, because the first part is kind of prologue, and then there'll be a film for each of the heroes, ideally. And it is an epic saga, because the backdrop for all of this is World War II. So that whole story unfolds during the first 6 young men, and then there were 2 young men who were lost during the Korean War, and so we cover that period as well.
What is the most interesting thing you have learned about the area since you started this endeavor? And do you think you'll ever learn everything there is to about the Hero Street neighborhood?
No, the older I get, the more I realize the less I'm ever going to know about the body of knowledge, not only just regarding this, but about everything, But I suppose it's just that this is the fact that we can memorialize these 8 young men doesn't take away from anyone else's service. And I hope that in doing that, it acknowledges all who have served and who are serving, and the sacrifices that they make to assure that we are free,
Indeed.
free of fascism. That's what my uncles were fighting during World War II, and that's what these young men were fighting.
And bless them, without a doubt. And to get a little bit philosophical on you here, in what way is the series revealing how history repeats itself, and in what way is it showing how ideally the United States is evolving into something better?
Wow, I think progress is painfully slow. That's what you realize when you study history, that we are moving forward, but it just seems like it's moving very slowly. At the beginning of Willie Sandoval's story, A Bridge Too Far from Hero Street, he was involved in Operation Market Garden. But at the beginning of that, before the U.S. entered World War II, there was a movement called America First that was happening. And so as you study history, you discover things along the way where maybe we made some errors in judgment. And I think because we don't know that history in some ways, maybe we make some of those same mistakes again. And so instead of making them once and learning, we maybe have to make them 2 or 3 times before we get past it and into real progress. But things are better, and I sincerely hope that we continue in that direction, embracing the diversity of our history here in America.
And thanks to Hero Street, we can all learn a little bit more of how wonderful the United States actually is. Kelly, thanks for joining me. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. That was Kelly Rundle, who, along with his wife, Tammy, is behind the Emmy Award-winning, Emmy-nominated docuseries Hero Street, which premieres November 12th at the Putnam Giant Screen in the Quad Cities.